Hello, hello. How are you doing? So, today I'm going to be doing my best northern accent for you as a part of this ASMR British collab that I am honoured to be a part of. I was born in Wales and I moved to the north of England with my family at the age of 2, I think, and we lived, and still they live, in a place called Lancashire. So that's where I'm from, if you're wondering. So yeah, I'm here to support Great Britain today, but I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm interested in ancient history, so that's what I want to share with you today. And I'm also supporting my Canadian roots. I actually live in Canada right now, so I don't live in the UK, and that's why my northern accent is a little bit off. It's not quite what it used to be. I have a mix of Southern English in there, I have a mix of Canadian in there, so I'm going to try my best northern accent for you today. And I'm going to be reading to you from Taliesin. I've shared this book before in an old video of mine, and the reason that I'm going to read it to you is because it is part of a 5-book series that is based in Britain, and it's the Pendragon cycle. So if you've never heard of Taliesin before, Taliesin is book 1. Merlin, which I'm sure you've heard of, as the magician archetype in history, is the 2nd book. The 3rd, I believe, is Arthur, Pendragon. The 4th, I believe, may be called Pendragon, and the 5th is the Grail, the Holy Grail quest. So that's just a little bit of background on that. The author is Stephen R. Lawhead, so I'm going to read to you one of my favourite passages of this book. It's a pretty big one, so I'm just going to read a small section to you in just a moment, but I thought I'd show you this map of ancient Britain first, because it's kind of interesting. So we have the wall here separating Scotland and further north of England, and then you have Londinium further down here, and I'm somewhere in the middle here. It's where I'm from. 10 rings there are, and 9 gold torques on the battle chiefs of old. 8 princely virtues and 7 sins for which a soul is sold. 6 is the sum of earth and sky, of all things meek and bold. 5 is the number of ships that sailed from Atlantis, lost and cold. 4 kings of the Westerlands were saved, 3 kingdoms now behold. 2 came together in love and fear, in Lioness stronghold. 1 world there is, 1 God, and 1 birth, the Druid stars foretold. So the chapter that I'm going to read to you, the small section of the chapter, is actually the 3rd part of this book, which is the name of the Merlin. So, just a little bit of info about this book. Taliesin, which I didn't know before reading it, is actually Merlin's father. Did you know that? Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but that's part of this series. That's the case. Taliesin was even more powerful than what Merlin is, but Taliesin was a bard, druid, and Merlin is known more as the magician who helps Arthur get the sword from the lady in the lake. So I've studied druidry for the last little while, and so all of these archetypes are running all the way throughout these stories, are weaved throughout these stories of old, these fairy tales they could be called as well, these myths and legends. But I find that it's just absolutely fascinating to me because it is part of British history. And I know that a lot of people are intrigued by the Knights of the Round Table and their quest for the Holy Grail and want to know whether that was a real person, as we all do, but they represent archetypes more than anything. So Taliesin is on a journey, a quest right now, and he is to go into the fairy world, the in-between world, the invisible world, okay? So, let's see here. He saw a luminous sky like shining bronze and heard the familiar strains of the haunting ethereal music. He smelled the sweet, heady fragrance of land and saw the mountains in the distance. And though he had explored their slopes many times, it was not to the mountains that he turned now. Instead, he found himself gazing on a small stream winding through the trees to empty itself in a forest pool nearby. Taliesin followed the stream among the glimmering trees to the pool, pushed through the bracken-covered bank to the water's edge, and wondered if she would still be there, the lady he had seen so long ago. Kneeling down, he peered into the crystalline water, his breath catching in his throat. The lady was gone. The water still flowed. The green horsetail weed still waved among the smooth amber-coloured stones, but the woman was not there. He rose slowly and retraced his steps along the stream to the place where the pathways converged. Choosing the one he had followed before, Taliesin started off. As before, he had not gone very far when the strange, glimmering, glistening fog began curling around his legs. In a few moments the fog had risen and deepened so that he could no longer see the path before his feet. He pushed on a short distance and stopped. Reluctantly, Taliesin decided to turn back and discovered that the fog now surrounded him completely. All about him, the dense vapour curled and wreathed on unseen channels in the air. Taliesin knew the peril of stumbling through the other world blind and dropped to his knees. He crawled a few more paces on his hands and knees before settling down to wait for the fog to clear. He waited a long time, but the fog did not lift. Instead, the luminous sky, showing through the fog overhead like a roof burning with a dusky flame, began to dim, and the fog grew deeper and more dense. Taliesin had never before seen or been frightened in the other world, but he became frightened now. He waited, hugging his knees and rocking back and forth as the sky darkened and the other world slipped into one of its rare, interminable nights. To buoy his sinking spirit, Taliesin began to sing, quietly at first, but with increasing volume to keep the fear away by the cunning beauty of his verse. While he sat there, wrapped in his cloak, singing his most powerful songs, he heard footsteps on the invisible path behind him. He stopped singing. A soft radiance shone through the rolling fog, and he perceived the presence of another world being approaching. An ancient one. The being came to stand near him, but not near enough to see clearly. It was just a glowing blur through the fog. Taliesin waited, not presuming to address the entity, but allowing it to speak first if it would. "Well, Shining Brow, here you are once more," the Ancient One said after a moment. The voice seemed to come from a place high above his head. Taliesin instantly recognized that he was being addressed by the entity he had encountered on his very first visit to the other world as a boy, years before. "I am here," he said simply. "Why have you come this way when you know that it is forbidden?" I had hoped to see, he began and faltered. You hoped to see, replied the Ancient One in a lightly mocking tone. And what have you seen? Nothing, Lord, replied Taliesin. You do well to call me Lord, said the being. That shows you have learned something in your years as a man. What else have you learned? I have learned to sing in the way of bards, answered Taliesin. Pride made him bolder. I have learned the secrets of words. The elements obey my voice. I have learned the ways of wood and glen, of water, air, fire, and earth, and all living things. You are indeed knowledgeable, O wise among men, taunted the being gently. Answer me then, if you can. Why is one night moonlit and another so dark that you cannot see your shield beside you or the spear in your hand? Taliesin pondered the question but could not think of a suitable answer. Why is a stone so heavy? Inquired the Ancient One. Why is a thorn so sharp? Tell me if you know, who is better off in death, the fresh-limbed young or the hoar-headed? Taliesin remained silent. Do you know, or can you even guess, what you are when you are sleeping? A body, a soul, a bright spirit? Where does night await the day? What supports the foundations of the earth in perpetuity? Who put the gold in the ground to make your torque? What remains of a man when his bones are dust? Skilled bard, why do you not answer me? It seemed to Taliesin as if he no longer remembered how to speak. His mouth would not frame a reply. Ignorance covered him like a cloak, and shame made his cheeks burn hotly. Have you nothing to say or word in letters? Demanded the being. No? In that at least you show wisdom, shining brow. Many prattle idly when they should listen. Are you listening? Taliesin nodded. Good, I told you I would teach you what to say. Do you remember? Taliesin did remember. He nodded again. On the day of your liberation, your tongue will be loose, and the words I will give you will come. You will be my bard, my herald, proclaiming my reign in the world of men. Men will hear your voice and will know who it is that speaks. They will hear you and believe. In the dark time, your people will look to you, and to the one who comes after you for light. You will give it to them as I give it to you. Do you understand, Shining Brow? Taliesin made no move, so the being said, Speak, son of dust, do you understand? I understand. So be it, said the Ancient One. Do you know who it is that speaks to you? No, Lord. Look upon me then, Shining Brow, behold. Taliesin raised his eyes, and a sudden sharp breeze began blowing, dispersing the unnatural vapour. He had a last glimpse of the Ancient One through a grey hanging veil of fog, and then the veil melted away, and there stood before him the giant figure of a man, at least twice as tall as any mortal man, wearing a dazzling white robe. Light glinted and shone in dancing rainbows around the man, and Taliesin felt the heat of the being's presence like a flame that licked his face and hands and burned through his clothing to set his skin ablaze. The man's face shone like the sun, burning with a white, hot heat. It could not be gazed upon, nor its features discerned. The being raised a hand towards Taliesin. The light leapt up, and the other world became a meagre shadow, vague and insubstantial. Do you know me now, Shining Brow? Taliesin sank to his knees and raised his hands in supplication. You are the Supreme Spirit, he said, Lord of the underworld, Lord of the other world. Of all worlds, corrected the Ancient One. Of this world and the next and the one beyond that. I am the long-awaited King, whose coming was foretold of old, who was and is and will be again. I am the giver of life, known from before the foundation of the world, by whose hand heaven and earth received their form. I am known by many names, but the time is coming and is soon here when all men will call me Lord. Taliesin trembled with fear and awe as the Supreme Spirit's words burned into his soul. I am the one you have sought, Taliesin, in the deep secret places of your heart. I am the light that strives against darkness. I am the knowledge, the truth, the life. From this moment you will hold no other gods above me, do you understand? Yes, Lord, Taliesin said, his voice small and uncertain. I understand. I have raised you up and set you apart for a special task. Remain in me, Shining Brow, and you will become a blessing to your people. For through you, nations yet not born will come to know me, and my reign will be extended to the ends of the earth. Do you believe what I am telling you? Yes, Lord, Taliesin said. I have always believed. Truly, said Shining Brow. Go now, and do not be afraid, for I will be closer to you than your next breath, closer than your heartbeat. Though darkness rises up against you and overwhelms you, I will never leave you. You are mine, Shining Brow, now and evermore. Taliesin raised his head. If it pleases you, Lord, give me a sign that I may know you. You ask for a sign, Shining Brow, and I will give it to you. Know me by this. Taliesin felt the heat of the beings present all over him and lay quivering with dread and excitement, light blazing all around him, piercing his closed eyelids. There was a touch on the crown of his head, gentle, almost no touch at all, but it was as if a firebrand had taken off the top of his skull, exposing the dark, soft tissues of his brain to the burning brightness of the light. And his mind was filled with images, a dazzling, whirling cycle of scenes, armies marching, shepherds gathering flocks, dark prison cells and noisome sick rooms, bustling cities and roaring marketplaces, quiet villages on lonely hillsides, shining rivers, deep forests, cool mountain heights, hot desert plains, icy cold frontiers, the court of kings and palaces of beggars, barren flats and fields ripe with grain, merchants engaged in commerce, lovers embracing, mothers bathing children, people talking and fighting and working and building, and much, much more. Men and women of different ages and epochs, different races, different created orders, different worlds, struggling, living, being born and dying. Taliesin saw all these things, but he saw them through the eyes of the Shining Lord who stood over him, and he had planted within him a tiny seed of understanding, and he realized who it was that he had vowed to follow. My Lord, my God, he cried out as the dizzying images spun on and on. When Halfdan found him in the grove a few hours later, he thought Taliesin was dead. The young man lay on the ground, his limbs still unmoving. He approached and saw that Taliesin was deeply asleep and could not be awakened. The druid covered him with his cloak and hunkered down to wait. When Taliesin finally awoke, he could not speak. I was with my Lord in the heavens when Lucifer fell into the depths of hell. I carried a banner before Alexander in Egypt. I called the stars by name from the north to the south. I was head architect of Nimrod's tower. I was in Babylon in the Tetragrammaton. I was patriarch to Elijah and Enoch. I was atop the cross of the merciful Son of God. I was 3 times in the prison of Ararianhood. I was in the ark with Noah and Alpha. I witnessed the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. I upheld Moses through the sea. I was in the court of Don before the birth of Gideon. And I was with my Lord in the manager of oxen and asses. I was moved through the entire universe by the hand of the Most High. I received my Awen from Seridin's cauldron. People call me poet and bard. Henceforth I shall be known as prophet. Taliesin I am, and my name shall remain until doomsday. Funnily enough, Taliesin's name is less known than Merlin or Arthur. So I wanted to read that to you as a part of English history, my English history. Your knowledge and curiosity may take you far with whatever research you want to do into the Pendragon stories, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.